Hey guys, welcome to the Point and Click Adventurers podcast, a podcast all about adventure games. And my name is Michael, also known as Yak Wax Lips, and as ever, I am with my co-host Turian. Hello, Turian.
Hello, how are you?
Yes, I'm very well. And we've just been speaking for over an hour. We've just ducked back on to chat because we've been speaking to some legends in the adventure gaming world, and that is Ken and Roberta Williams. I'm still shaking from that experience. It was awesome. How do you think it went?
It was amazing. Yeah, I'm still pinching myself a little bit. Fascinating to hear everything they had to say. It's really lovely people as well.
Yeah, really lovely. We had a list of questions we had to ask, and like Roberta took like 15 minutes to answer the first one, and like I could have listened for another 15. Look at the questions, you've got to get through them. But and then they stayed on afterwards as well to talk. Absolutely wonderful people. So normally on the podcast, new listeners, we talk about what we've been playing, what we've been doing, what's coming up and all that. But because this interview is, it's over an hour pretty much, isn't it? So I thought we'd just dive straight in. So yeah, let's just dive straight in right now to Ken and Roberta Williams talking about everything, literally everything. Right, here they are. Our guests today are no strangers to adventure games. In fact, they're one of the biggest names associated with the genre. King's Quest, Space Quest, Gabriel Knight, Leisure Suit Larry, Phantasmagoria. The games created by and published by them under the Sierra name is long and influential. Now, after an absence lasting over 25 years, they're back with a new game, Colossal Cave. I'm delighted to welcome to the Point and Click Adventurers podcast, Ken and Roberta Williams. Welcome.
Well, thank you very much. We're happy to be here.
Thank you.
So how have you guys been? Where have you been for the past 25 years?
Oh, I'll let him answer that because he's kind of been the captain of the ship, so to speak.
We sold the company and retired, and we had a non-compete saying we had to stay out of the game business. So we started boating, and but serious boating, like crossing ocean stuff. And we took a little boat around the world and moved to Mexico. So we were kind of half the time in Mexico and half the time on a boat. Went through 27 countries and probably would have continued doing that forever and ever. But COVID hit and we were stuck home bored. And we don't sit still well. So we I wrote a book about Sierra, and that got me thinking about games. And then I started working on a little game, and Roberta got involved, and it turned into a big game. So that's it.
With the idea that it would be Colossal Cave.
Yeah,
the old original adventure game.
Yeah, she had the idea of doing that. Well, because I couldn't think of something to code. I learned how to program in Unity and was trying to think of something to code. And she suggested Colossal Cave, and it seemed symmetrical because it was a game that started Sierra and meant so much to us and so many different people in the industry that it seemed like a fun game to start with to kind of get back into the business and see if we like the feeling. So
yeah, basically.
Was it always on the cards then to release it commercially? Because I know you said you just started to dabble in making a game again. Was it always in the back of your mind thinking, well, actually, this is going to be released commercially?
Initially it was, except for I was kind of thinking it would sell like 50 copies or something. I was planning on it under I talked about releasing it under a pseudonym, because it was going to be just me and one other guy, and we weren't taking it too seriously. But we put something together in about 90 days, 4 months maybe, and it looked like a good two-person 4-month project, and wouldn't have sold very well and wasn't commercial quality.
No,
but I was happy with it. I thought it was good enough that it could sell a few copies and those that played it would enjoy it. It was better than the text game. But then Roberta got involved and we decided, let's go ahead and do this right and put together a big team.
So why did I get involved?
Well, Roberta got involved because her name was on it. And
Yeah, how did my name get on it?
well, if we were going to move 50 copies, we had somebody's name on it, and mine wouldn't do it. But
yeah, I kind of snuck my name on it, and I kept saying, why do you put my name on it? This is your project. And well, I don't know, and then he started meetings with Unity and everything else, and they're talking about it. And I'm going, well, this wasn't really my project and my name is on it. And that's not going to be good. So that's basically where I got involved to fix it.
Yeah,
I guess you could say. But it looks really good now, I think. I think it looks great. So I think we pulled it together.
Initially, the plan was not to, and even now, I have zero interest in turning Cygnus Entertainment is the company name we came up with. And Cygnus was the name of our boat. That's how we came up with that name. But no interest in trying to create a big company and hiring lots of people. Sierra had 1,000 employees and was a full-time job, to say the least, to run that thing. And at this point, we're pretty happy being retired. Maybe if we were to start another project, it would probably be another 2 to 5 years before it would come out. And there's no interest in becoming a publisher and publishing other people's products. This is.
However, people have asked a lot. Well, what are you going to do anything after this game? And my answer has, and Ken's has always been, well, let's see how this goes. If this is popular, people really like it. You never know, honestly. We're very unpredictable, so you just never know what we're going to do. So it's certainly possible. However, if it does middling, kind of bumps along, maybe we'll just say this is the one and lonely from Cygnus Entertainment. But maybe we'll have to see how the game goes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, there's a voter expression that says something like plans are best made written in sand at low tide or something, because it's good to just kind of get up, decide what you're going to do, and then go do it. And that's the way our life has kind of been the last 25 years, is that we see something we want to do and we go do it. It's the beauty of being retired, I guess. But although it hasn't felt like retirement the last 2 years, or the last year, we were working 7 days a week, 12 hours a day.
I'll tell you, Ken started this project about 2 years ago. And like he said, for a few months, he was working with one other person. And then, and with the idea it was going to be this little project that him and this other person were going to do. And somehow my name kept getting, put into it. And so finally I got involved. And so that's been almost 2 years. And for Ken and I, it's been like 7 days a week for, weekends. From the time we get up to the time we go to bed, it's been a lot of work. And a lot of love. I do want to tell you that. I want all of your listeners or your audience to know that we have put our all into this. That there's no doubt about that. It's a project that we love. We're doing it to, partly as a project, but really, from my standpoint, it's really to honor the Colossal Cave adventure game, the original. Will Crowther and Don Woods, the original designers, they started my career. Without them, I wouldn't be talking to you. You would have no idea who I was. I have no idea where I would be, or Ken. They started Sierra. A lot of people come to me and they say, I played your King's Quest as a child, and I know that's what got me into the industry. I knew when I played it, I wanted to be in the games industry. I wanted to be a designer. I've heard that so many times. But for me, that happened because of Will Crowther and Don Woods. Yeah. They're for me what I am for, others. And so for me, it's it's a project of love and honor and homage, and means a lot to me. So I just wanted to let you know it's a big deal. So
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've played it. I know that Joe, you've played it, and you can absolutely tell that you've put a lot of love and effort into it. I think it's you've done a very good job.
It's I didn't want to have Ken was sounding a little down, and I didn't want you to get that impression at all. So we're very excited by it. We're so proud of it. I have a lot of affection for it. I know that there's a lot of people out there that also has affection for it. It started their careers. It started the industry. It's so important. It's like an historical document. It's for our industry, the games industry, video game industry. It really is the beginning of it. And as any historical document, and I put it in those terms, even though it's a game, but as with any historical document, you treat it carefully, you treat it with kid gloves. You want to bring it forward to modern audiences, game players who has never seen it. They probably have no idea about it, what it is. Like, what is that? Have really no idea. And it was just seemed to me that it was time that they know that, especially those people that play games and they're huge fans of the games industry. I just think there's very few real history to it. Everything with the games industry is going forward, high tech. What's more and more, what's faster and bigger and better and more and, and everything. And I think very little thought is given to the history and understanding it. And partially that's because it's such a new industry, really. But it's getting old enough now that I think it's good that we look back on this and maybe other games too, and realize what was before and regard it in that way. And also for me to work on it and bring it back to modern game players and a lot of traditional game players that have played it in the past and loved it. Many people have told me that they played it as a text game and they were so excited to play it with graphics to see if it matched what they had in their head when they were playing it. Because when you're playing the text version, you see it in your head, like a good book, you see it.
Yeah.
And they were real curious to see how we did it and if it matched the ideas and what they were thinking as they were playing it. And that was for me the most difficult and fun and interesting part of the project is how do I take a text game and bring it to life with graphics and yet maintain its authenticity, the challenges. And I kind of get pinged a little bit that it's not modern looking enough. It's not, I kind of stuck with the point and click interface because of the historicity. Is that the word? Is that a word? Historicity?
It is now.
History.
Yeah.
History aspect. The history aspect of it. It just seemed to me that if we got too carried away with, like with VR, I initially, some of the VR reviewers have said, oh, but I couldn't do the hands, and pick up an object and manipulate it and do all that, stuff. And I had thought about it and looked at it and played some other games with it. And I rejected it because I didn't think that it was going to fit with the historical nature. That's what I was looking for. Historical nature of Colossal Cave. However, we're rethinking it that maybe, if we spend another 6 months, we can kind of get that hand, the hand thing, the more physicality. We haven't quite decided yet. But I think some VR players have sort of thought that the point and click interface was kind of weird, with VR. And I have to admit, for the PC and flat screens, it seems fine. It works just fine. But VR, it is a little weird, and to try to think how to do it was not easy.
Yeah.
So
I think it's actually better in VR with the point and click.
I kind of like it. Yeah.
Yeah, because you can point, from 20 feet away and pick something.
Yeah. I mean, I actually kind of like it, but if you are really, the real fanatic of wanting the real, physicality with the hands and, and the weights and, and all that, then I guess you would probably think that it wasn't good enough or whatever, but that's neither here nor there anyway.
Yeah. That kind of leads nicely into the next question.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, 25, nearly 26 years is a very long time to have been out of the industry. So how different did you find it making a game in today's world compared to what it was like back in the 80s and 90s?
Well, I'll let Ken start on that one because he's the one that started the project. So
yeah, I mean, there's differences in terms of design. There's differences in terms of platforms. There's differences in terms of technology. It's a different world. At Sierra, we had our own proprietary engine, and the engine felt a lot like today's Unity. When I first saw Unity, it felt like in fact, even then, Roberta said that maybe we'd have been smart to take what we called SCI, our own internal engine, and continue it and keep upgrading it and market it as a product. And probably we should have done that because Unity's a big company and has done well. But so it felt right at home when I started building. But the debugging tools especially were so much better. Being able to step through the code and run it in 3D and have it running on a headset while I'm on a computer, stepping through code. So technologically, development's way easier. In terms of the competition in the market, it's way tougher. I mean, at the time Sierra was doing it, I mean, there were only a handful of competitors and only a few products a year coming out. And now it's a pretty tough market out there. And the state of the art. I mean, we did spend millions of dollars building this thing, and I would call it kind of the high end of the indie market, but well below what the big studios are spending on games. So it's a very it's like being in the film business or something. It takes a lot of money to make a hit. Yeah. The level of professionalism on this project, I mean, one of the nice things about it that the COVID actually worked for us was that some of the tools for collaborating as a team have gotten a lot better in recent years with Slack and Microsoft Teams. We were able to work, when I needed to quickly assemble a team, I suddenly could look for the best team in the world without respect to where they were, and we could all collaborate, and that was kind of nice. If I needed an environmental artist, I had an entire world to pick from. We had one artist in Brazil, we had a programmer in Thailand, we had a QA person in Zurich, and yet we all were there together working as a team every day.
And all over the U.S.
And all over the U.S. I don't think I could have built this game back in the Sierra days in this kind of way because it was really hard to find a good people and move them to
wherever we were.
Yeah, Yosemite or something. It would have taken this long just to assemble a good team. So
Yeah, we were able to assemble a really good team really quickly. If we said we need a good animator, we get out there on some of these job sites, I guess.
yeah, there was
Like-
a site that really worked well for us. Upwork worked well for us, and there was a site that was like workforindies.com or something like that. I'm probably messing up that name, but I'd run an ad and
Yeah.
immediately I'd get good people.
So we were able to assemble a really good team. And some of it was I have to admit, some of it was our names and who we are. There was a lot of people that wanted to work with us. And so we were really fortunate in that way. But,
Yeah, and you mentioned sort of increased connectivity there. Obviously, with social media and things today, you can be in touch with people at the click of a button and hear from fans. And you've got things like YouTube where people will be playing your game and you can watch them doing that. So how have you found that being thrown into the mix as well?
Well, I mean, there's two things. On terms of beta test, we never really did beta test the game because we were always kind of afraid to let it out until it was done and we were happy with it. It's such a complex game that if there were any bugs anywhere, people would drive themselves crazy trying to think it might be a puzzle. So that end we didn't do, but watching on YouTube now, people playing the game is wild because on our team, we had a couple of speedrunners. One guy who had 100,000 followers on Twitch, a speedrunner, and he played through the game in 21 minutes, which got our other speedrunner on the team addicted to trying to get through it in 20 minutes. And you watch these videos and you just think, how in the heck are they doing?
We did see one speedrunner just a few days ago that went through it in 15 minutes.
I mean, I don't know. You could have played the
in a
text game in
few
15
seconds.
minutes.
It took me like 6 hours, and I missed a lot.
I mean, I obviously know the whole game, and I couldn't do that. I think the fastest I could probably do it would be maybe an hour.
Yeah.
I mean, they just go run right through it. And I play it. I crank up the speed a little bit, but just, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't understand how it's possible. I mean, I probably couldn't get through it. You said 6 hours. That'd probably be me. That's well, and you need to have a strategy for getting through.
Well, yeah, and see, that is one thing I want to say about Colossal Cave is strategy.
Yeah.
I've designed many adventure games, and most of them had like a story. It was very story oriented. I try to add as much exploration and puzzle solving and all that with it as you can, interacting with the game and characters and stuff like that. But having a story element. This game does not have as much of a story element, partially because it's the very first probably ever computer game, regardless of whether it was an adventure game or not. I mean, I guess there was Star Trek with X's and O's. You play it with like X's and O's was before. But this is really what you would really consider one of the very, very first computer games. And I use the word computer rather than video because that's what it was. There was no video games in those days. So this really did start it all. And so things like adding story was not necessarily what Will Crowther and Don Woods were thinking too much. They were thinking more in terms of exploration. Will Crowther was and his wife Patricia were avid spelunkers, and spelunkers are cave explorers. Yep. And they had a favorite cave system called Mammoth Caves in the state of Kentucky in the United States. And they went often. That's what they did. That was their fun. And they had a favorite section in Mammoth Caves that they loved, and they went there all the time apparently. And so they initially it was Will Crowther and his wife who mapped out the section, and he took that section of the cave, the actual Mammoth Cave. Yeah. And they took that section and made that the beginning and quite a lot of what Colossal Cave map is and what it was in the original game and still is in our game. And so they took that and then they just added some characters and they added lots of puzzles and mazes and then, and levels of play and strategy and points and timing and mechanisms and lamplight and, all kinds of stuff they added to it. And, not so much story, but all those other things, to the point that there's a lot of strategy in playing this game. You don't just play it once and think you can go through it, and get through it to the other end and you've solved it, as you do with most adventure games. It is there's strategy. So if you want to be a speed runner and you want to try to go through it, meaning to get points, 350 points, and get through it as fast as you can, you have to have played it. You had to figure out what's going on in the whole world of Colossal Cave. You have to have notes, and then you have to look at the strategy of how you're going to play it to get through it as fast as you can and yet get those 350 points. So it isn't something you can just go in and do. It would take quite a bit of time to figure it out. It's a lot of strategy to this game.
Yeah, there absolutely is. Like I say, I played it for 6 hours. I could quite easily play it for another 6. The amount of times you get to like the end of a cave and you open up a new bit on the map, and then the map just keeps growing and growing and growing. It's just like, it's a quite deceptively big game, isn't it?
It's a very big game.
Yeah.
It's very, very big and complex. And like I said, it has a lot of different strategies and ways to play it. So even when we we're QAing it, which means, we play it over and over and over again to find all the bugs and all the issues and make sure that the gameplay is correct. And we have to play it differently each time.
Yeah.
So, every time I would go into QA the game, I would have to think of my strategy. What strategy am I playing today in QAing it? And then I'd go back in, the next day and I would change strategy, play it a different way. And after that, I would play it a different way and to make sure that I hit all the elements. It's impossible to go through it and play this game and hit all the elements in one gameplay. It's just impossible.
Yeah. Now, to go back to something that you said quite nearly near the start of the interview, you have your name attached to this, reimagined by Roberta Williams, and you've had this game in your head for 50 years, almost 50 years, a long time. So you obviously.
I think it's closer to about 40 years.
40 years. Sorry, I'm aging you. Sorry about that.
It's still a long time.
Yeah. So you have
a long time.
You have the locations and you have the sounds and the atmosphere of Colossal Cave. They're in your head. They're ingrained in your head. So when you came to make it, or rather, Ken, when you come to make it, and Roberta was there, how did it change? Like, were you like, no, that cave is too dark. That cave is not. Doesn't look right. So, for example, the Swiss cheese room. I love that room. I think it's amazing. How do you take a text adventure and make it how you envisioned it?
That was one of the difficult things. Is there's two pieces to that answer. One is the look and feel of the graphics. What are we just when you go into a particular room, or chamber or passage or, the different parts of the cave. We had room descriptions by Will Crowther or Don Woods. We had each place we'd go into, we'd have the room descriptions from the original game. So the first thing we would do is, me and my, I started working closely with our main environmental artist, who, the environmental artist who works with the gray boxing and and helps get the texture, the lighting, the scope and the dimensions of each room, each place. That's what the environmental artist does. And I would work with her and we would go over each place and look at the room description. How did they describe this particular chamber or room in the cave? And we would really try to put those elements in that they described. if they said that, it was 100 feet high ceiling, way high with, walls straight up, or, and a huge chamber, we would try to make it look that way. If it was very tight, small and tight, we would do that. If it was magnificent, and they would describe, a column of orange stone, cascading down one wall, and and water trickling down over here, whatever it was that they described, we would make sure we put those in.
Yeah.
Because we were keeping all of the original messages in as they were, although we have a wonderful narrator who is narrating those messages. You can have them come up with subtitles. You can read them if you want to, or you could not have the subtitles and just listen to his voice. And he does an excellent job.
It's amazing voice.
So
I love
we are
it.
maintaining all that, but and then the other element is the interface itself was another thing that I had to really think about, because the original game used a parser, which means that you would type in 1 or 2 word commands to the game, and the game would then talk back to you with more text. It would tell you everything you needed to know in text. And we decided not to go that route because, frankly, we didn't think that today's game players would want to do that. So I just decided to stick to the kind of 80s and 90s point and click, figuring, this is a historical game, and it's probably the best look and feel for this game to do it that way. So those were sort of the things I had to think about. And finally, the third thing that I had to think about was going back to the storytelling element. A lot of games now have a lot of story. Story is kind of a big thing, and I understand why. I mean, I did it myself. But this game didn't really have that. And I myself, when I started looking at it, wanted to have I kept thinking to myself, as I probably did 40 years ago when I played it, but what's the story? How can because what I wanted to do with the graphics was put in some story elements, but I had to understand what those story elements might be. And there wasn't a lot of help from Will Crowther and Don Woods in that area. And because when you're trying to design graphics and to show you where you're standing and where you are, as opposed to describing it, it's different. So I kind of came up with the idea of an ancient civilization that maybe many thousands of years ago had lived in the cave, without defining exactly who they were. But it sort of took the 7,000-year-old ruins that you might see around the world, maybe not so much Stonehenge, but maybe thinking like in Ireland, Newgrange. What else I'm thinking? In Malta, there's 7,000-8,000-year-old temples and things like that. Kind of this at the same time frame. Or up in the Orkney Islands in Scotland, they have some of these old ruins and things like that. They're very ancient, and the look of that time period is pretty similar around the world from that time period.
Yeah.
And so I said, it's an ancient civilization from that long ago. So you'll see we have these massive stone lintels or entryways, huge stone entryways into passages and old, symbolic carvings and things like that potentially was the ancient civilization that lived in the cave.
Yeah.
I just to have something really interesting to look at, and why not?
Yeah.
Don't really describe it. We just say, and there's the Hall of the Mountain King. So one of the first things I said, well, who is the Mountain King? I wanted to know.
Yeah.
Who's the Mountain King? And so we just said, well, he must have been the king of this ancient civilization. That's what he was. And without really explaining it, but just to add a little element of more fun. And then I also increased the dwarves. In the original game, that the dwarves just pop in around and throw knives at you, but no real explanation of what they do in there, why they're there. And dwarves in myths and legends are really thought of as miners in caves and in old mines and things like that. And so I just kind of went with that idea too, and it sort of expanded on it. So I did little things like that, but did not change any of the gameplay.
Yeah, so it's the little details.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I mean, bearing in mind that you both know the game inside out, do you both have a favorite area or a favorite puzzle in your version of the game?
Well, the puzzles are the same. There's one thing I can tell you for sure is that if you get stuck in this game and you don't know how to solve a puzzle, or you don't know how to get out of a situation, go to the internet and say, how do I get past the dwarves? How do I get past the troll? How do I cross the troll bridge without, I have to give them a treasure and come back? I mean, what do I do? You get the answer on the internet, all the walkthroughs. You can use every single hint from the internet. It works the same in our game. I did not change any puzzles. All I changed was kind of look and feel of some graphical areas and add some fun, but nothing. The mazes, the puzzles, the timing, the lamplight you get, the moves, everything is exactly the same. But my favorite, what do I find? I really like, I like the troll. I mean, he really bothers me. He was really hard to work with, and make him do in his whole area in the what we call the troll area.
Yep.
That was one that gave us all a lot of pain.
Yeah.
From programming to art, animation, because it's so big and complex. So much happens in there. Because there's other creatures. There's another creature in there. It's really fun and interesting. And this is a lot that happens. So it gave us a lot of heartburn, but I also love it. It's super interesting.
Yeah. What about you, Ken? Have you got a favorite part?
I kind of like the end. Have you been there to the repository?
Don't mention too much.
I can't say too much. You're saying the end of the game, though?
The end of the game.
Yes, I have.
You like the end of the game.
Yeah, it's fun.
That's it.
I thought it's fun.
I thought it's fun too. Yeah.
Yeah, an awful lot of, and it just shows the attention to detail. I mean, the ending of the game, the final 5 minutes, probably had weeks and weeks of programming into it. It's kind of silly, and I like being able to use the Monty Python song. That was kind of I can't say that.
Okay,
I'm not going to say that.
no.
But no, I like that part of the game. It's just kind of cheery and fun and silly.
I mean, we have silly stuff. I mean, the original game, Colossal Cave, actually had a lot of humor in it, a real tongue-in-cheek. A lot of the messages written by the original designers were very cheeky, and witty in many ways. And we kept that. All the original messages are in there. The narrator speaks them, but they're all in there. And I think our narrator caught the reading of the messages in the way that the original designers wrote them. Sometimes very serious, but sometimes very witty, sometimes very cheeky, and when it was time to do so, I thought he did a really great job. I added messages because we needed more. Adding graphics just obviously added more, people are going to want to look at things and maybe try to do things that weren't in the original game because there were no actual graphics.
Yeah.
If you have no actual graphics to look at and maybe you see something, if they didn't tell you what was in the original message, you didn't know to ask about something because they didn't tell you. It was all text. Whatever they told you is all you knew. But now you go into a room and you see, and that's and I wrote messages to fit with those, the fact that we did add graphics and some extra things, but I tried to write them in a way that sounded like the same tone that the original designers wrote their messages and narrations in the same way, so that you wouldn't be able to tell which was something they wrote or something I wrote. I didn't want that to be able to be seen.
Yeah.
But that brings up another thing, which was a little difficult to do when trying to reimagine this game. Maybe you could turn that off.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is when you add graphics, like I said, we added everything that the original designers said you would see in any place, whether it was exits, over to the west or the east, or or stone formations or whatever was around it. We made sure those were all there. However, when you're doing actual graphics, you've got to make it pretty interesting, especially in today's world.
Yeah.
That people expect that. So, for instance, there's what's called the debris room, and that's just pretty much at the beginning when you first go into the cave, and you go, a couple rooms out, you come into what is the debris room, and that's where a lot of debris from the surface has been washed down into the cave, and it's kind of muddy and just debris all over. Well, so we had to do debris. And so when you're talking about debris and stuff washed in from the surface, that's going to be stuff. It's going to be old boxes. Maybe there's a tire and, cans, Coca-Cola cans or bottles or whatever, there's going to be stuff washed in from the surface. So we put it in there, makes it look more interesting. But here's the conundrum is, and this is something I had to really deal with. It was like, well, people are going to want to click on this, and they're going to want to click on that, and click on this and this and this and that and that and that. And you have to give them a message for all of that. And so I started out doing that, but then it was kind of like, oh, I see a bottle in here. Oh, there's some Coke cans over there. There's an old cardboard box. It's all, but after a while, it was kind of like, well, wait a minute, why am I doing this? You can obviously see them, what they are. Yeah. It's an old cardboard box. So what I kind of quit. I did it a little bit at the beginning, and then I quit doing that because it started not making sense to me to do that, because those things weren't important. They're just there to give interest to the environment in which you're standing.
Yeah.
And so the way that we decided that we were going to do this, and this was not easy to figure out, and I'm sure I'll probably get pinged in certain areas. Some people might say, oh, I wanted to click on these cardboard boxes, and everything, and I didn't get any messages. I didn't get told what that was, or I was trying to click on it. I wanted to take them and not really understanding that if I did that on every single thing that you could possibly see, one of two things would have happened. I would just be writing these really repetitive messages over and over and over again. Well, no, that's not, you can't take that. That doesn't belong to you, or this is that, no, that's just a bunch of junk, or, whatever. I would have just been writing a lot of stuff like that. Or just, I don't know, it just would have gotten repetitive and not making any sense. So what we decided to do with the interface is just with the point and click interface that we decided to do was just let you know that if you take the eye, that's the look around, you can just sweep it around and it will glow where things are important. And if they're not important, they won't glow, and you will know really quick what to ignore. And I think, and after a while, you kind of get used to it. Partially because we do reuse a lot of props. If we have cardboard boxes here, we might put them somewhere else and, around and things like that. And you kind of get used to it. But and I did kind of want to explain that because we were watching some people playing and they're kind of going over all the things that we put around and like, no, I can't get that. I can't get that. And I wanted to explain that why it seems that way. It was either we don't put stuff in and what you see around you will be more boring, or stuff in to make it more interesting. And then, you understand the conundrum? I hope you do.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. That kind of does lead me on to this next question, actually. Obviously, the lay of the land of making games is completely different than it was in the 80s and 90s now. So when you started this, Ken, it was obviously never really on the cards to do a big commercial game, and now it is. What have been your biggest challenges to make this game, or rather, is there anything that you've learned throughout the process that you would do differently?
Well, can I? Are you asking in terms of making it a commercial project, or just keeping it a little small?
Just obviously it's out now, so let's say it's a commercial project. So you've maybe the team you've built, maybe the you wanted to make it quicker, maybe you wanted to make it longer. Maybe there's things you wanted to add, take away. What's been the biggest challenge of the whole thing?
First off, if I were doing it again, the first thing I would probably do is pick something different that had more mass appeal. We treated this like a historical preservation project. If this wasn't designed from the beginning to be a AAA title, it was designed to honor history. If we tried to treat it like we were working for a museum, and we were the curators or something, and we were restoring something that had been truly important to the industry. And we studied the original source code. We tried to make sure it played like the original game, warts and all. There are some puzzles in the game that could be argued to be 100% illogical. And yet we wanted to keep it because it's part of the history.
You can't change a historical document.
It's all of our heritage. If we were the curator for a museum asked to showcase the Mona Lisa or something, you can't look at it and say, well, I don't like how her eyes look.
I want to make her smile a little more.
You can change the framing around the painting, and you can light it better, and you can showcase it, but you can't change it. And I do think that, if I'd started with a blank sheet of paper and said, what do I want to do to sell the maximum number of copies, which at Sierra was always kind of the goal. And that wasn't really the goal with this project. The goal with this project was to take something that meant a lot to our generation and bring it to future generations.
Well, I think it also means a lot for everybody, for this industry, not just a generation. So many people don't know how important it was to the beginning of this industry. And so it's important to everybody to place games today. It is. It just is.
And then in terms of development, I don't know, there was a lot I would do differently. We, like with any project, there were team members that I hired that didn't make the cut. There was a lot of time wasted with doing graphics and then finding out they didn't work in VR. VR was a much bigger challenge than we realized it would be when we first got into it. we redid the graphics at least 3 times. And in that opening scene where you see the forest, finding trees that don't shimmer, I mean, even today, I mean, even after the product ships, I'm wrestling with those stupid trees. I tried to tell people several times, just do some dumb bubble trees or something in the forest because they weren't working in VR.
That is one thing that it was really, it's actually sounds kind of comical now, but it was a big deal. We had one artist who worked on trees over and over and over and over again, and in VR. They're fine on the PC version, the Windows version, on flat screen, the flat screen play through platforms. It's fine. Trees are fine, but VR trees are not fine. And what we have learned is that everybody who does a game in VR, right, at least right now, has problems with trees, which might be one reason why you don't see a lot of trees in VR games. Maybe you've never noticed that in playing VR, but there aren't a lot of trees, and that might change, and maybe it's changing now. But trees are a huge issue
in VR,
and in VR, and unfortunately we had a forest to deal with because that's what the original game had. So we had to deal with trees. I think we did about as good of doing trees in VR as anybody could do, and replicate some kind of a forest.
No, we did a lot right. I mean, one other thing I probably wouldn't do of targeting again is that we targeted an awful lot of platforms. We had at least 10 different devices we're targeting between Switch and PS5 and PC and Mac. And we actually did a separate version for Steam Deck, a separate version for Linux, separate version for the PS4, a separate version for Xbox XS, another version for Xbox One. And in a small team, targeting that many devices is really hard. And and marketing has been kind of a challenge for us because there's so much clutter in the marketplace that trying to break through and make a lot of noise, even with our names. I mean, probably, like Roberta said earlier, you wouldn't be talking to us if it wasn't for our names and our legacy. And but that only gets you so far. When you actually reach people to reach into their wallet and drag out cash, they got to really believe the game is something they want to spend time on. And it's easier to get money than it is time because there's so many different things competing for their time.
The other thing I think that works against people who might have a little bit of a name in it or a legacy is the expectations are really high.
Yeah.
Well, they're working on it, it's going to be, I don't know, the greatest ever. And that's really hard to do. I mean, it's not that Ken and I are not capable of it. Frankly, we were paying for this ourselves. And, where we have done pretty well in life, we're certainly not a huge company. We're just us. Yeah. And so we were only going to spend so much money, and all that, and do the absolute best we could do. Which doesn't, though, necessarily translate to a big AAA, box office buster looking game that an Activision, a Blizzard, whoever.
No, this was never intended to be. I mean, this is intended to be a historical remake that I think is going to have extremely long legs. I'll be surprised if 20 years from now, this game isn't being played after a lot of people have forgotten other games.
That's kind of the way we've been thinking about it. Is this game will I think it'll have a little bit of a slow start, but I think it's going to build and have long legs. I really do.
Some of this game too is I always talk in terms of a crawl, walk, run strategy. And this turned out to be harder than we thought it would be. But this was meant to be kind of a simple start And then the next project will do something a little more ambitious. And then after that, because I've seen a lot of projects fail when people bit off more than they could chew. Yeah. And we kind of did this with this game with all those platforms and trying to do VR.
We were at the edge of that.
Yeah.
Biting off more than we could chew. We were just really skimming the edge of that. I think we did pretty good. It was hard. Yeah.
No, I mean, yeah, because figure I hadn't coded in a long time and had to spin up to speed on Unity, had to assemble a team and had to ship a game. It's, I think without our experience, it probably couldn't have been done. But
no,
it was still a challenge.
Not the way, it was challenged.
So, yeah. Anyway, sorry, back to you.
Yeah, we ramble. We start rambling.
No worries. If we look back at the Sierra adventure games, obviously they were a huge success and shaped the gaming industry in a way that really means that we have this podcast now. I don't think we'd be sitting here talking about it without your games. What do you think the main key to the success and longevity of those games was?
Well, I think partly it's just well-designed games. Sierra always put quality was important for us at Sierra. Everything had to be the highest possible quality, bug and error free. Ken and I personally looked at just about every game that we were going to build or publish ourselves, and I think we generally had a pretty good eye for what we thought was gonna sell, and that it was of the quality that we wanted and expected. So I think it was just attention to detail. We really have always been that way, right? They had good programming. I think, even though Sierra was a publisher, I really think we were in our heart of hearts, a development house. We were, development was what was important, not so much marketing and, huge advertising on TV, and all that. We always were of the opinion that we are a development house. That is what we are.
There was a lot of complaining at Sierra that only the development group really got corporate support. And it was true. It was true. I valued above all our development organization, and of 1,000 employees, 700 were building product. It really was a strong development machine that, and the other thing was that we were willing to take chances and target niches that maybe other people wouldn't go at. When we launched a series, we had a specific demographic in mind, and we were willing to target fairly narrow niches if we thought they were there. One of the problems when I look around the industry today, one of the things that bothers me is, even though there's so much product coming out, that it seems like a lot of it is similar to each other. And at Sierra, when we would do things, we would try to think how to not do something like anybody else had done. I would always refuse to hire anybody who had worked for a competitor. Whereas I get the sense in today's market that it's valued if you've worked for a competitor. And that was never the Sierra philosophy. Sierra wanted to do unique products and target niches that no one else was in. And whereas we didn't do a lot of marketing, we considered ourselves very strategic from a marketing perspective. And we did have a strong brand management organization. And I don't know, plus, like Roberta said, the games were just good. When I go back and I look at our old games, they just look fun to play. I'm almost jealous of some of our old games. So I look at King's Quest IV, or King's Quest V, or Leisure Suit Larry, or look at Space Quest. You can't look at Space Quest and not laugh. And it was some good stuff.
Yeah.
So
our focus was always in development. And I think that with coming back now and doing this game, we're still the same people, and we still look at things the same way. And development was what it's all been all about for this game. And just like with Sierra, we didn't always necessarily put all of our efforts in the marketing. We put our efforts into the game and development. And that's still the same with this. So
yeah, that's how the company got destroyed after it was acquired, is that the acquirers looked at it and said, well, heck, they got too many internal developers. If we get rid of all those developers and just become a publisher, then the products will come in the door free, and put in more marketing. They basically took a formula that worked for 20 years and they destroyed it all in 1 year. Yeah. So it was sad.
Yeah. Well, yeah, all of that was chronicled in your book, which I have got behind me right there. It's an excellent read, Ken. It's a brilliant book. And Roberta, you did also write a book over COVID as well. So you both are obviously creative people. I know we haven't got a lot of time left yet, so I'll just end with one final question. You are very creative, very passionate, very driven. Colossal Cave is out now, like you say, everywhere. So the big question is, what is next for you guys?
We don't know. I think we've spent 2 years on this project. In fact, we're still working on it. We're not quite done. Even though we were downgrading marketing a little bit, just at our last response, we are now working on marketing. And again, it's just him and I. He's got his marketing hat on, and and I'm his little marketing helper, and interviews and things like that. So we're still working. We're not quite done. We still have some platforms to get out, for this game. We're still kind of QAing, like just today, he and I were QAing the Nintendo Switch. So we're doing that, we've got it, and playing it and going over it and make sure it's good. And I don't know, Steam Deck and,
well, we're goofing off a little bit, though. We're talking to you from in Mexico. And for the first time in a very long time, I went out this morning and played golf. When we were retired, actually, I would play golf like 5 days a week. And now I haven't played hardly at all in a year.
But we have worked really hard on this. We're still working. Like I said, we're not done yet with this. We're still maybe doing a little changes of the game as people are playing it. We're sort of noticing that we may have to do a little more hand holding than we thought we would have to, because some elements of this game are rather hard. And so
the mazes are stumping people. They're getting to it, and it's a real mood killer. You kind of get in that maze and you're stuck.
And so we're working on trying to do a little bit more help there. And so we're still working on some of that stuff. So we're not quite done yet working. We're still working. But the main thing is, once we're not working anymore and it's done, and we're done, and now we just sit back and see how it's going to go. That's when it's going to come clear to us that, we don't have a project. What are we going to do? And at that point, anything could happen. We could decide. And now I could say, well, I've got this really great idea for, a game, and I could do that. And Ken will look at me like, no. That could happen. Or Ken will say to me, you know what, we need to get back on the road, but I don't mean road, I mean a boat, water, and start cruising again or something. We don't know. I think a lot of it is just going to come down to how well this game does. If people don't really like it, or it's just not doing what we were hoping it would do, we might say, well, I guess that's that, and let's go boating. But if it does really well and people really like it and are clamoring for more, who knows?
That's where it comes down to having a really good idea. We've forced ourselves to have blinders on for the last couple of years, because we've got to get this game out of the door before we start worrying about the next one.
Yeah.
And for the first time, things have loosened up enough that, like yesterday, I wrote a blog article about AI. I started looking at ChatGPT and thinking about how AI could be used to make more intelligent NPCs. You know that I've always been interested in massively multiplayer. So, there's different areas that I want to think about now because it's time to maybe graduate from crawling to walking or something. But so I don't know. I mean, a lot will flow from thinking about what to do. And if a clever idea, either she has a great idea for a game or I have a great idea, then we'll do it. And
so
your guess is as good as ours.
It remains to be seen. It remains to be seen. We'll just maybe leave it at that.
Great answers.
That's wonderful. It's a great way to end the interview. Ken Roberta Williams, thank you so much for joining us here on the Point and Click Adventurers podcast. It's been an absolute pleasure to hear your journey for the past 2 years.
Well, thank you very much. It's been an honor for us to be with you.
So that was our interview with Ken and Roberta Williams. How did you find that, Michael?
I loved it. Like, absolutely loved it. I have played the game and it's really interesting. What I really liked, Roberta was not making excuses, because that's the wrong word, but she was saying the reason we did this, we did this choice, it wasn't just a flippant choice. It was like she really went deep into the reasons. One of my things about the game, I thought the game was really good fun, really good family game. I would have really liked to have looked at all the things that she said, like looked at the Coke can and all that. But it never occurred to me why that wasn't. And then obviously she went into the reasons. I'm like, that totally makes sense now. Yeah. And I appreciate the game more for her saying that. So yes, thank you, Roberta.
Yeah, I think the thing that struck me was their attention to detail on literally everything. And I'm never going to look at trees in that game in the same way ever again after hearing what they had to say about them.
Yeah, I'm not one to play VR, but yeah, if you make trees in VR, apparently you're doing very well for yourself. So well done, tree VR people.
Yeah. Before you showed up as well, I don't know if you caught the end of it. It wasn't on the interview that we shown, but Ken was actually showing me the game running on the Switch on the camera before.
Oh no, I
got a little preview, exclusive preview there.
Oh, I didn't see that. That's I was worried that if I was being a bit early, I'd be a bit eager. So I arrived 9 o'clock on the dot, and apparently I missed all the fun.
Yeah, there you go. See,
damn it,
it pays to be early.
Yeah. Okay, guys. So we're gonna, because this episode has gone on quite a long time. We're gonna leave it here. We have got a bunch of guests booked in pretty much now through to like the summer-ish. So yeah, expect a regular podcast fortnightly. Our next guest is, I do believe, because we're recording this quite a while in advance. I do believe it's Tony Warriner, famous of Revolution Studios, so Broken Sword and Lord of the Tempests and all that. And he has a new book coming out all about Revolution, and we're going to be talking to him on the podcast after this one, which comes out, I have no idea, because it's like 10:30 at night now. We've been talking for hours. But yeah, just thanks for watching, everyone, and listening as well. Thank you.